Yes? Yes, okay. So I will welcome everyone to the Tuesday, June 19th Wenham Selectmen's meeting. We have already opened the meeting, called to order, been in executive session, and adjourned from executive session. So we are at the point where we, as we do every meeting, have an opportunity for public input for items that are not on the agenda. If there's anyone here that would like to speak to something not on the agenda, seeing no one, we'll move on to announcements. And the first announcement, I guess, is mine. And we have an update. We have a guest. Zoe Ting is back to give us an update on an activity, a drive that happened earlier in May. Can you take it away? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Zoe Ting, and I live at 23 Burnham Road. I'm pleased to be back to give you a report on the Bucher Early Act fabric drive. Our drive was very successful. We doubled last year's collection and collected 290 bags of fabric. On behalf of Early Act, we are so grateful for your support and the support of the Wenham community. I have with me a picture of the Early Act group and the Early Act and the collection.
Oh, let's see the picture. That's phenomenal. 290 bags.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of bags. Maybe you should.
Right there. I recognize.
Maybe you should send a copy of this picture to the to the Chronicle. Maybe they would.
Who's that big guy in the middle?
That is pretty impressive.
Do you know who that is?
That's our janitor. He just.
Oh, at the school.
He helped you a lot, I bet.
Looks like a very proud participant there.
Yeah,
Yep.
tall one too.
Oh, it's so cute. This is the picture that needs to go to the Chronicle. The one with
As opposed to the bag.
with the kids in it. That's
Yeah.
amazing, Zoe. Congratulations.
This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you for
Good night.
coming. Gosh, now you gotta have to go home and do homework probably, huh?
Yeah, school's not over yet.
Last full week of school, right? Our next announcement has to do with the water ban.
I am a selectman for water bans.
There should be like on your card or something, some
The water
notation.
commissioner.
The fourth water commissioner.
Honorary.
I'm going to read this announcement, and I'm actually kind of surprised that we have to read this so early. This is June 18th, right? 19th.
Yeah.
Due to low flows in the Ipswich River, I don't know who monitors that, but the town of Wenham, through its Board of Water Commissioners, hereby declares a mandatory water ban effective June 18th. That's yesterday. I watered my grass yesterday morning. I didn't
Good thing you
notice
did,
this.
right?
I didn't know. It was,
Yeah, well.
I wasn't caught. Flows in the Ipswich River have fallen below the minimum level deemed necessary by Mass DEP to sustain a healthy watershed, except for uses which are required for health or safety reasons by regulation for the production of food and fiber. Fiber, really? What does that mean? For maintenance of livestock, to meet the core functions of a business, all non-essential outdoor watering, including but not limited to the use of water for irrigation or automobile and property washing, is prohibited. Hand watering is allowed from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. daily by hose or bucket. We added bucket this year. This ban includes water from private wells. Violations of this order should be subject to fines of up to $100 for each offense per Chapter 21 of the Town of Wenham bylaws, which we enacted a year ago-ish.
So the bylaws have actually been on the books for a number of years.
But we have a fine process, okay.
Right.
Correct. The
We have to-
non-criminal disposition process.
We'd like to thank all residents for their understanding and cooperation. I was actually quite surprised. I thought it rained a lot, not this past week, but the week before. So I was surprised that the Ipswich River has this low water flow, but I doubt it could probably, we could have a deluge the next 2 weeks. I doubt if they're going to change this right here. So we're into this through at least September 30th. And that, so we asked everyone to really please comply with this, particularly those who have lush green lawns. Some of us will be out there at 4 a.m. in the morning patrolling and letting the water department know that, and they can tell, by the way, they don't have to count on people like us, but they can tell by the amount of the water being consumed. And the last 2 or 3 years, we've had, call it between a dozen and 20 Residents of town ignore this and have lush green lawns where the lawn is burnt up, and that at least I'm one selectman who wants to vigorously encourage our town administrator to enforce this and have violations reported to the who?
So the town staff is definitely going to be plans to be proactive this year in terms of enforcement, and so it's the water superintendent who actually will be issuing the tickets.
Okay. So
Jack.
I'm going to be asking for how many, how we're doing on this.
You can do better than that.
I would expect
because-
nothing else.
Because my announcement fits right in.
Great, John.
Would you like to fill the
High five, okay.
Would you like to fill the position, the vacancy we have on the board of?
Actually, I'm prohibited from doing so.
Yes, you are.
By the
Hey,
town
Can you
bylaws.
check that out really thoroughly, please?
Sorry, you're stuck with us for a while.
Board of Selectmen cannot take a position where we supervise. We don't supervise the
Hello,
water
Jack.
commissioners.
Well, we-
I see,
Fit.
I don't know, maybe a home rule petition, Jeff.
Yeah, right.
There we go. All right.
So please, we want everyone to comply, and that it's not fair for some people, if we don't have any water, rain in the next couple of weeks, to have, lush green lawns. Everybody else is struggling to basically have their lawns. So please comply. We don't want to have any violations, but we want to, for the 95% of the people in town who do comply, we want to honor and acknowledge them by basically
Being good doobies.
being good doobies and basically asking people to comply. If you don't comply, please do so. That's longer than I'm so loud.
And the one thing I just will add to that is that obviously earlier this spring, the town opted to not renew its withdrawal permit. That being the case, and that was this change based on the Ipswich River flows was a requirement in the permit. We still have our registration. We still have our water restriction bylaws that we have to adhere to. So this is no different in terms of operationally or from a policy perspective, what we've been doing historically, even though we don't technically have our withdrawal permit.
Because we have pretty much everything duplicated in our bylaws.
And our
And our
registration.
registration.
Correct.
Okay,
All right,
the next
staying on with water.
has to do with Water Commissioner, yep.
Yes,
Go ahead,
our
John.
water, there is a water commission vacancy on the commission. And so the Board of Selectmen would like to request, all due seriousness, that those who may be willing to sit on the water board, because I'm trying to think, who was the fellow that's,
Richard
Quaitman.
Quaitman.
Richard Quaitman has been on there for years.
I
He's
guess
moving out of
he-
town. He
yeah.
had to resign.
so we would like
So
to
we're told.
get some applications of interest, and you could send them right up here to Town Hall, because we need them in by Monday, June 25th, which is next Monday, to Town
coming.
Hall. So please consider doing this, because it is a very vital service that they provide for us. So,
Particularly this time of the year.
yep, comes into focus. All set.
So June 25th is 6 days from now, including a weekend.
Yep.
I think it's fair to say that if we got a letter of interest a couple of days late, we might still look at it.
Yes.
We could make a big exception for this tonight.
I mean, if we don't get any by the 25th.
Yes.
We'd have to
We're
extend it
going to have to
anyways.
extend it anyway. Okay, so the next
Yeah,
one,
and then we're, I'm sorry, Catherine.
oh, no, that's okay.
We do plan to meet on July 10th with the Water Commission to evaluate applicants and then hopefully appoint somebody.
I think it's a joint meeting, isn't it, Peter?
Yeah,
Yes.
assuming that there's.
Assuming that
Any
we-
elected
Letters of
board
interest.
vacancy requires a joint meeting with us and the elected board, right?
Correct, and
Yes, and a
it's to
joint.
fill the term until the next election.
Bylaw 23.4.
Okay, the next, moving right along, the next announcement is the request for a letter of interest to fill the CPC, and that position on the CPC, and that's Jack's.
Board of Selectmen is requesting letters of interest for one at-large opening on the Community Preservation Committee for a 3-year term. The CP is charged with reviewing applications for grants from the Community Preservation Fund. Should be for the Community Preservation Fund, not from, right?
Well,
Making recommendations to town meeting for funding approval and monitoring the distribution or in use of any funds approved by town meeting. The act provides that the Community Preservation Fund may be expended on projects in any of the four categories, any of the following four categories: historic preservation, open space acquisition, affordable housing, comma, and recreation, creation of recreation.
Affordable housing creation, comma, and recreation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Correct.
If interested in seeking the appointment, please submit a letter by Monday, June 25th, to the Town Administrator's Office at Wenham Town Hall, blah, blah. So it's a very interesting committee, and there's the chairman right across from me right now. And that,
Actually, there are 3 categories. It's open space and recreation.
Oh, okay.
And it's not open
That's
space, is it open space acquisition?
It's not just for
Yeah,
acquisition
okay.
anymore either.
Right, so,
well, you got the gist. It's
yeah.
open
There's more
space,
information.
recreation, historic preservation, and so forth.
I think there's probably some information about this, what this committee does on the website, which
There
is
is.
hopefully.
Yeah, there's 9 members of the committees, and that 5 of these are appointed by the various boards that are allowed to appoint their own person, and 4 of these, which this is one, is appointed by the Board of Selectmen for a 9-member committee.
Okay, we good with that?
Yep. Veterans?
Sean has the next announcement having to do with Veterans Assistance Fund.
Yep.
think we have a
There's a new Veterans Assistance Fund that has been set up due to our town meeting approval of what's called Mass General Law, Chapter 60, Section 3F, and this is a local acceptance statute establishing a new Veterans Assistance account that will be funded by donations from the residents on their tax bill. And next month's tax bill will include the option for residents to donate this assistance program. Now, I have a question, Peter. The tax bills are sent out quarterly, so if you elect to donate on this quarter but not next, or a different amount, it can vary, because I looked at the form, and it
It's a fill in the blank
has,
kind of
yeah, it's a
thing,
fill
right?
in the blank.
It's whatever amount you're interested and willing to donate to one of actually several different funds, the Veterans Assistance being the new fund. But yeah, there's no prescribed amount, and
So anywhere from $1 to whatever somebody
Million.
wants to do.
Correct.
5 million.
yes.
So it's a very good thing. It's again, overseen overall by the Commonwealth of Mass, or established as part of our responsibilities. The board sought to offer this local program since very few Wenham residents are able to take advantage of the state's Chapter 115 program over the years due to the very restrictive eligibility standards. So this is going to be overseen by the Veterans Committee, the Wenham Veterans Committee, which is working on this now, and then they'll evaluate the needs versus the amount of money, and it can go towards food and heating bills and other expenses. So, take a look at your tax bill, and if you feel that you can and will donate, fill in the blank, and I'm sure the veterans would very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, and in that vein, the next announcement has to do with letters of interest to fill several other committees having to do with donated funds, scholarship fund, educational fund, and elderly and disabled relief committees. In addition to the new Veterans Assistance Fund, residents will also be given the option to donate to several other previously established funds on next month's tax bills. In 2004, the town approved local options, Chapter 70, Section 3C and D, creating a scholarship fund, an educational fund, and an elderly and disabled fund. For several years thereafter, residents were given the option on their tax bills to donate to these funds, but that practice has been discontinued for a number of years. Now that the town is starting to once again give residents the opportunity to contribute to these funds, the Board of Selectmen will appoint residents to each of these committees so they can appropriately allocate funds that are collected through this process. And there are actually balances in the 3 funds. The scholarship fund has exactly $3,951.98. The Education Fund has $10,345.43, and the Elderly and Disabled Fund has a balance of $12,178.17. Please submit letters of interest by July 16th to the town administrator or by email at nrobach@wenhamma.gov. And if I'm understanding this correctly, this is 3 separate committees?
There are 3 separate committees. The Scholarship and Education Committee, both by statute, have representation from the school superintendent or their designee. I've already reached out to Superintendent Harvey about that. And then the Elderly and Disabled Committee, I believe it's called the Taxation Aid Committee, has 3 or 5 total representatives, the chairman of the Board of Assessors, the town treasurer, and then 3 at-large residents,
So we need multiple letters of interest for each of these committees?
Correct, yeah, they all have to be separate under the statute, the way they were set up.
I have a question of definition. The last 2 I understand. Scholarship, what does that mean, scholarship? Is that a general term for educational scholarship, or is that for other purposes?
I thought that the definitions for both, the criteria for both, the scholarship was a little clearer, but the education one was kind of vague and could probably, if we have the flexibility, use some clarification on our part at some point.
Yeah, so for the education, it is broad under the statute. It's supplemental educational funding for local educational needs or to provide funding for existing adult literacy programs.
Oh,
For scholarships, it really is for financial aid to deserving town residents, and there's a certain.
It can be used for other things. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, I cut you off.
Yeah, so that's there's actually more clarity in the statute around what the scholarship committee can be awarded to.
Right.
In terms of the recipients of financial aid must be residents of the town at the time the financial aid is awarded and have been accepted to pursue education beyond the secondary school level at an institution deemed accredited by the committee, et cetera. So,
So once these committees are charged, I guess there's going to have to be some criteria set for, who should be chosen to get a
Correct.
scholarship. What should the other educational funds be allowed for?
and the statute allows those committees to set up those procedures and criteria. And so I think, we already have several $1,000s in each of those funds. If we're gonna, have this checkoff form on the tax bills that are going out, I would expect us to continue to bring in funds, and I think it makes sense to put them to good use.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it is a separate committee from WISH. Tom Tanis happens to be the chairman of the Board of Assessors. He's also been on WISH since its inception, so I reached out to him to let him know what was going on and to ask him, honestly, if he had any recommendations on people who might be willing to sit in on this, the new committee for the Elderly and Disabled Relief Fund. Maybe something that they could even hypothetically piggyback on a WISH meeting and this new committee and have back-to-back meetings or something along those lines, depending on what applications have come in.
So this is a newly designed tax form?
It's a new tax form, yep. We worked with our vendor and had that. We reached out to a number of other municipalities to see what they had in terms of their form, but we made it work.
Yeah, it's pretty clear,
Tom is also chairman of Senior Care.
Yes.
Yep.
Some overlap there.
If anybody should.
All the indigent people, Tom.
Yeah. Well, elderly, get on that committee.
We'll take the
Right.
veterans, you do the indigent, okay.
Okay, so moving along on the announcements, we have a block party, Jack.
A block party. It's Saturday, June 23rd. The rain date is June 24th. It's a two-town patriotic celebration It begins at 4 o'clock and lasts till 9, except at 3 o'clock, according to this announcement in front of me. There's a Decorate Your Bike Parade that begins from 3 and ends at 4 at the Hamilton Wenham Library. Decorations are provided. There's music, kids' activities, food trucks, wristbands for special rides, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, fireworks at dusk. And that it's, from what I hear from people who've attended this in the past, it's quite a successful event.
Yep.
So hopefully,
Been to it a couple of times, yeah.
A couple of times.
The community.
Last
has
20
to-
years? Have you been the last 20 years?
Not that long, no.
Okay.
I didn't know it was going that long.
Well, this is morphed from the two-town fourth.
That's right.
When it was
That's
difficult,
right.
the people weren't really around
Couldn't get
on the
enough
fourth.
patronage
Right,
for
and
the
so they've
fourth.
turned it into a slightly earlier when people are around, community block party,
Yep, so
Somehow they got the fireworks in anyways.
at dusk, that's right.
Yeah.
So,
which would be pretty
there you
good.
go.
Okay, the last announcement, this is the second time we'll be making this announcement, but it's getting closer. The Wenham Affordable Housing Trust is going to be presenting the action plan that has been recently given to us in a draft form. Our consultant, Jennifer Goldson, is going to come and do a presentation on that plan Tuesday, June 26, 2018, at 7 p.m. in this room. She will share 5-year goals of the action plan, the details of how the goals respond strategically to Wenham's housing needs, the direction provided through community engagement and consideration of feasibility, and she will present a proposed timeline for implementation of priority initiatives. I do want to mention that this is not just a presentation. It's intended for anyone, and in particular the people who were there at the original feedback session, to take a look at the presentation and give us some input on what they think of what the result of the work has been. So we invite everyone to come. It actually, I think, is envisioned to be a joint meeting posted between the Affordable Housing Trust and the Board of Selectmen. The trust is very interested to hear the Board of Selectmen's input either that night or at another meeting shortly after that. So it's pretty, I think it's, what's the right word? It's pretty, yeah. It's pretty, I was going to say aggressive, but that's a negative word. Ambitious. It's a pretty ambitious plan, but it seems like it might be doable and could result in filling a very important need in town. So, that being said, we will move on to reports, and I think we have a town administrator report.
Yeah, a few quick updates. You may have noticed there's been some activity down at the old Flynn Golf Course. So site work started a few weeks ago now. The demolition of the pro shop is now complete. They actually let the fire department go in and do some training.
Yeah, that was pretty spectacular.
Beforehand. And they're just getting started with the initial access road construction. So just as a reminder, the town, the planning board has a peer review engineering consultant who's on site on a regular basis, making sure that all the permit conditions are being met. And eventually, once the access road and bridge is constructed, stormwater drainage system and septic system are all installed, then they'll start working on construction of the new units, 22 new units in total. It's going to be phased construction, as has been much talked about. And again, just as a reminder, still have that 500-foot setback for where the new units are going in. And really, in terms of tree removal, that's being limited to a great extent. So I think there's some good interest and activity down there. It's been a long time coming, and it's good to finally see.
Right.
Yep, I agree.
Just a few things around Town Hall. 2 things. The first is town meeting last year approved $18,000 in capital improvement funding from free cash to paint half of the exterior of Town Hall. Then town meeting this spring approved the other half. So starting July 1, we'll have another $18,000 to do that work.
I saw ladders all over the building Saturday.
You may have noticed, yeah, the shutters are off, and they did some pretty intensive pressure washing to begin prep over the weekend, and they're going to start painting, it sounds like, at this point, this coming weekend, and they'll start on the first 2 sides, and then once we get on the other side of July 1, they'll complete the other 2, and they've got the shutters in the shop now, so they're starting painting on that, and the shutters will then be reinstalled.
And the new color is what?
Yeah, right.
Pink, right? Pink?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Right.
On the left side, the right side.
Yeah, the 1A side.
You got 3 choices, white, white, and white.
Yeah. That's what it'd be annoying.
So I think, believe it or not, it's been a good number of years since it was last painted. So good to see that work finally getting done. And then the other piece is just up the hill. The foundation work has all been done. Our 12 by 28 foot prefabricated shed is going to be installed next Monday up at the top of the hill in between the 2 lots for Enon 1. So that should all be done in one day, and then over the next few months over the summer there'll be some additional site work, landscaping and signage and some finish painting and the like, but it should all be ready for the 375th celebration on September 8th for ribbon cutting that day.
We haven't forgotten where the fire engine is.
No, we just coming down 1A.
You'll just take it down on your way in.
That's
somehow.
right, yeah, hook it
Well
up.
cared for.
And the last piece is something that was talked about, I'm not sure if it was the last meeting or the one before that, but we had gotten the report from Bartlett Tree regarding our street tree inventory, recommendations for removal, lots of discussion historically about needing to start doing some planting. So last night, the Finance Committee approved reserve fund transfer request of $25,000, 14,000 of which will be used for high hazard tree removals, and 10,000 of which will be put towards planting 20 trees, 10 in the fall and 10 in the spring, which the DPW will be doing. Win Mullery's been involved, as obviously Bill Tyak has as well. And so I think it's good to finally be having a conversation about getting some trees planted and, really being strategic in the trees that we do remove based on the limited budget that we have. In our discussion last night, Bill provided some further background information to the Finance Committee about the request, and he, in the past 2 years alone, DPW budget has covered an additional $27,000 in tree removal costs outside of the $25,000 line item for tree removal expense that we have in the budget. So it's clearly an issue that's been hard to address, and we'll continue to chip away at it. But I think it's good for them to have an opportunity to be able to make some headway on that front.
What is an average cost of a tree plant?
So the ballpark number they're using for these trees is $500.
And what size tree are we talking about for $500?
You would ask that. I don't know.
Are we talking a little tiny tree?
No, they're not. They're
somewhat 5-year-old tree.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact caliper, but they're not. They're not tiny. And I think
Saplings. They're not saplings.
No.
Because we're replacing.
For that, I'll plant it myself.
Well, I mean, we're cutting down very mature trees.
Right.
Yeah, 100-plus-year-old
Yeah,
trees.
so I'm a little concerned about what's going to end up going there.
Yep. I think one important thing is that we're using, for safety purposes, a lot more road salt than we used to.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be a lot more of a sand mix. That's been one of the contributing factors to the lifespan of these trees. And so when in selecting the different species is being sensitive to that and trying to, make sure that the ones that are planted that are directly adjacent to the roads are a little hardier so they can stand up to the elements.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay. So let me see if I can navigate this next one. We have on our agenda a public hearing to discuss or to present proposed personnel policy changes. We're not quite ready to have that public hearing and to have that discussion. So I think what we need to do is to vote to open the public hearing and then vote to continue it to a next meeting.
The next meeting.
Right. So the first motion is I move the Board of Selectmen open the public hearing for the purpose of deliberating on proposed personnel policy changes related to a comprehensive employee handbook update.
So moved.
Is there
I
a
need a second.
second?
Second.
Oh.
Further
second.
discussion? If not, all in favor of? Okay. So we've opened the public hearing.
Oh, we're going to close it. Why? Are we
Well, we're
official?
not going to close it.
Oh.
We're going to continue it.
Same thing.
Well, I don't want to close it. So I think what we're going to do is, understanding that we're not quite ready for this hearing, but we think we will be by our next meeting, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing to July 10th, 2018, at 7:15 PM in this room.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just to clear, why do we have to even do that? Why couldn't we just pass over this item? Why don't we have to open up and continue? Is there some
Well,
legal
because
reason?
it's a public hearing that's required by law.
It's
posted
actually,
in
it's
the-
not required by law, it's required by town bylaw. There's a provision,
Yeah, but why do we have to open it now and then continue? Why can't we just
Why
pass
don't
over?
you
Because
just
it's
open it
already been
next week?
posted in the paper.
because we had to publicize it. The
Okay.
town bylaw says that we have to publish it in the paper,
Okay.
any personnel policy changes.
Okay,
So
okay.
that's,
And so it doesn't have to be publicized in the newspaper again.
no,
Because
because it's already been
we've announced it
published
here.
and
Okay.
continued.
So that will.
So all of you people who came for this public hearing tonight, I'm
Right.
so sorry we have to
come
postpone it
back
for a
on the
week.
10th.
No, you can leave right now.
And so
Okay.
that actually means that under new
Didn't
business.
you see him go?
Yeah,
One person did. yeah.
under new business A, yes, we did vote. Didn't we vote?
Yeah, we did.
Yes, I think we
Open,
all
yes.
voted to
We did.
continue to the
We
10th
did.
at 7:15 in this room. And
Witnesses.
And that being said, we will pass over, or for now, under new business A, which is a discussion of the proposed updates, and I presume that will be on the agenda on the 10th. Now we get to, under new business, item B, which is the town administrator annual performance evaluation. So, I guess that's my item. So just briefly, because the process was a little different based on case law this year. All of us received a mutually agreed upon evaluation document for Peter for the year, which included some general skills and some goals. We,
Quiet, Peter.
please, we individually filled out our opinions on gave evaluation on each one of these items on these documents. And then we each sat down with Peter and had a discussion individually with Peter about our own personal, I guess, relative to this performance evaluation. After that was done, the 3 individual evaluations were given to Peter's administrative assistant, Nikki Roebuck, who aggregated the results. So the first time all of us have seen the aggregated results are in our book tonight. And I believe will also be posted online with
Should be up now.
the packet. Should be up now. So all I'm going to do is to give you the general aggregated results. And we combined, for instance, general management and effectiveness, which had maybe 5 or 6 specific items, if we were, just to recall, last year, which we evaluated separately, but we gave Peter the same evaluation for all of them. We aggregated them into one group. So, in general, under general management and effectiveness, and if someone wants to see the individual details, they can check them online. Peter received the highest, in aggregate, the highest rating of outstanding. Also outstanding, this is going to get a little boring, also outstanding in board relations and communication. Also outstanding in interpersonal skills and development. Outstanding as well, the highest that he could achieve in leadership. And then he was evaluated on the goals that we set for actually all of us last fall?
August.
Well, last August? Seems like a long time ago. With the same, we evaluated in our forms the progress towards completion of the goals. So the first goal was, and I might be a little more specific on these, the first goal was advance human resource management. And the first category in that was successfully coordinate the hiring process of a new fire chief who fits the needs of the department and the community. And the aggregate score, again, was outstanding progress on that item. Second one under goal 1, complete update of employee handbook and implement select recommendations of human resources audit. Had kind of an interesting situation where the aggregate, there was, I guess, an inability to aggregate because each of the three of us had a different result. So there is one, on the paper I'm reading here, one category, 1-4, which is outstanding progress, 1 commendable progress, and 1 unable to evaluate for whatever reason under the human resources audit and the implementation of the employee handbook. Goal 2, implement strategic planning measures. The first one was managing an inclusive and transparent FY19 budget process that balances the goals of mitigating tax rate increases with service expectations of residents by providing a variety of policy options to deliver a balanced budget. This is a long goal, including determining the merits of and needs for an operating override. And Peter was rated outstanding in that progress in that area. Successfully delivering an updated joint recreation intermunicipal agreement is actually, was at least one person who was unable to evaluate, and the average or of the other results was commendable progress. He also received commendable progress on evaluating long-term operational and financial sustainability of regional dispatch program and recommending alternative service options. And now that I'm near the end of this, I probably should have said at the beginning, the choices were outstanding progress, commendable progress, satisfactory progress, insufficient progress, or unable to evaluate. So now that I've been through half of these. Did I say commendable progress in the area of regional dispatch? And outstanding progress in determining the feasibility of shared inspectional services and making policy recommendations to the selectmen. Improving communication, developing and implementing a citizens engagement strategy to educate residents about town's financial condition with a focus on FY19. That one, in general, received satisfactory progress, a rating of satisfactory progress, and conducting a townwide resident survey. At least one person was unable to evaluate, and the balance, the aggregate of the others was a 3, or commendable progress. Enhanced public safety, having to do with pedestrian and vehicular traffic on the downtown corridor, outstanding progress. A note for next year, those don't actually say progress on them, but that's what it is. And then there was a set of essential functions that I will say Peter was rated as outstanding on all of. The annual town meeting is a small exception where he was rated as having commendable progress on that particular goal. And economic development was another sort of mixture of one person giving him outstanding progress, 1 commendable, and 1 feeling unable to evaluate. That's it. I guess the one sentence is, it appears to me from reading this, that in general, the aggregate results for the most part show outstanding performance and progress, with some areas that are commendable. That's all I got.
Thank you.
I thank Nikki and us. I don't know, this does say discussion, so if anyone would like to comment on this, I guess
I would.
now's the time.
He's done a great job, but I'd be interested in his comments about our evaluation.
Evaluation process.
No, the results of the evaluation.
Well, I obviously, I think in some ways, a lot of the value of the process is in the conversations that we have on an individual basis. I don't think, based on the relationships we built over the past 3 years, I don't think any of the feedback was tremendously surprising. I think that's a good thing. I think it's important that we not just check in on an annual basis going through a performance evaluation process, but that it's ongoing feedback and discussion. I think that's certainly the case. That said, I think it is good to step back and have a discussion about how I'm doing and how I'm representing the board and working for the town, and so I think it was a good conversation, good process. The public-facing side of it, as we've talked about, is probably a little less than ideal, but I think that's just a result of the environment in which we work. And so I certainly appreciate the feedback and again, the more the discussion that we had than necessarily using a form. It's hard to get that right, quite honestly.
Anybody else have comments?
I'd just like to say, similar to Jack, Peter has been an outstanding performer. Nobody's perfect, but he has carried the ball very well. I snickered at the beginning of this process because I don't like public input unless it's constructive, and so I think the one-on-one communication on a daily, weekly basis is more effective and functional than sitting there with charts and pick 1, 2, or 3, or 4. We're dealing with people and we're dealing with relationships, so to me, it's a very personal thing that isn't necessarily best viewed in the public. But to let people know that I think highly of Peter and his performance, absolutely.
Thanks, John.
I think probably the one value, and I may be searching for this, but the one value to this public process is that not only do we have an opportunity to talk with Peter individually, but we have an opportunity in public to let the public know that we think that he's doing an outstanding job and in a lot of areas.
Good point. Good point. Valuable point.
So we go on record as saying that to the public, not just to Peter. That's the best I can do in terms of the public process.
Good point.
So there is an action required here, and it has to do with Peter's merit increase, as we have done with all employees, as Peter has done with all employees and recommended to us, a merit increase of anywhere from 0 to 2%. I'm going to take a chair's prerogative. The motion I have here has X's in it. I'm going to fill in a number just for the sake of it, and you guys can decide whether you think it's the right number or not. Because it's kind of weird to read a motion with XX%. So, based on the performance evaluations conducted by each member of the board, I move to approve an FY18 merit increase of 2% for Town Administrator Peter Lombardi, retroactive to July 1, 2017.
Second?
Is there any discussion about that?
Well, I go right along with it.
Glad I picked the right number. Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Well, we could have said
I
1.777.
could have. That's why I just, threw it out there. Yes, yes?
Yes, aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Peter, for all your hard work.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Appointments. Jack, how did you get out of appointments this week? At this meeting, we have another list of appointments which John has.
Thank you.
I don't know.
We're covering some
and-
The
territory
water was so
here.
heavy duty that day.
Okay, and we've,
All right,
just
so we
before
have-
you start, may I ask a question, because I might be pertinent? So we received an update.
Yep.
This seems like it's an additional, it doesn't replace something. Is
It
that
does not.
correct?
It is in addition
So-
to, it's right before that appointment, the barrel agent appointment.
Okay, so there is a motion in here.
There is a motion,
Okay.
yes,
I
yes,
didn't get as
absolutely.
far as, okay, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
No problem. Yes, we have a little list of appointments that are due at this time. So I will read off each one. I move to appoint Robert J. Brown as Assistant Inspector of Wires for the term beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending July 31st, 2018.
Is there a
Oh,
second?
this is a 1 month?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
if I
can we
could
have,
just explain
yeah.
briefly on a number of different
Okay.
of
can we
these
just have a
appointments.
second, and then we'll
Okay,
ask
I'm
for an
sorry.
explanation?
Well, I got
Or
cut short
unless there
there.
isn't a second.
I thought maybe I
You
had the
want to hear
wrong
the
date.
explanation before you second it?
Yes,
Okay,
because I'm not prepared to second it.
okay.
Okay, so as you know, we're planning to transition to our shared inspectional program with Hamilton. We have assigned an intermunicipal agreement at this point. We have funding in place from both towns. We posted the now new full-time building commissioner position, the part-time electrical inspector position, and the part-time plumbing and gas inspector positions.
Okay.
The posting expired yesterday, and we are in the process of scheduling interviews with the candidates that we're going to bring in, hopefully all next week. That's the goal at this point. And then we're going to go through the interview process, and then coming out of that, we will have recommendation for both the Wenham Board of Selectmen and the Hamilton Board of Selectmen in terms of making those appointments in both communities. So the idea with these appointments is simply to get us through to the end of July.
So some of them will be a 30-day approximately
Correct.
period, and some will be in 1 year.
For each of the inspector positions, they're all just through the end of July to
Okay.
basically get us to the point where we're going to make
That's comments.
their appointments.
Go for it.
So it's not that I'm against having BJ as the assistant inspector, but I'm not in favor of Mark Unger being the inspector of wires, based upon what I've heard from both the police and the fire people about his unavailability on at least 3 occasions over the past 6 months. I'm not prepared to vote for that. I would really prefer to have, as BJ is right in front of us, that he be made the inspector of wires, and that come up with somebody else for the assistant inspector, where that is, but when we get down to inspector of wires, I'm not prepared to vote for Mark Unger.
Got
And I
it.
am prepared to vote for Robert J. Brown, BJ, which is in front of us, as the inspector of wires. I don't know how that,
So are you looking to amend this?
yes, I am.
Okay.
So,
Just for the month of July, you want to make that change to the appointment?
all of these are just for the,
Correct.
The
Right,
inspections
right.
are all-
Because they're all,
he has not shown up, and so that we've had, so I don't think that we should be, I don't want to cast anybody, so that I think we should be making
All right, so you
Robert Brown
recommend,
the inspector of wires, and leave the assistant inspector vacant, or unless you got somebody else in mind that,
so if I cross out assistant, that would suffice?
So we had a hiring process to fill that position, and I understand that you've heard some concerns.
we all have.
Okay.
I haven't, but I wouldn't. So I can't say that they don't. I believe if Jack heard things that,
It's not once or twice, and it was 3 times in the past year where there was an emergency, and this person at the bottom of the thing was called, he was unavailable, and twice, and the 3rd time that he was out of town, and the process is that he was supposed to notify the alternate or assistant inspector he's out of town, so the assistant inspector could be available for this emergency, and that such a notification was not made. And so I'm hearing from the fire department, other people, that of an inability to do the job, and that be available to do the job, and that in one case there was a fire at the schools, and that it was quite concerning, and that we can't find anybody, and that
Jack, can I suggest something?
yeah.
Hearing your concern, I take it seriously. If we take the assistant off of the wire inspector to be Robert Brown for this 1 month, and then it looks like we need to evaluate
This is only a month anyway.
So the positions have been posted, and we're going to be interviewing for the new shared inspector position between both towns. Because right now, while historically we have had the same electrical inspector in both towns, that's not the case now. So Hamilton has their own electrical inspector. We have our own, and so we're going through that interview and hiring process at this point.
So is that perhaps, Jack, input that you'd like to put into the hiring process, which will be done by the end of July, or do you want to, I don't think we will have an assistant if we change this.
So, well, we don't have one now. So, I mean, well, excuse me. We only have one person. So this is just at the end of July. This is not June 19th.
Right.
I'm just saying, I don't want to, I think I made my point clear. I think that we should have, when we get down to the inspector of the wires, we should substitute Robert J. Brown for the person in front of us.
Okay.
And if we don't have an assistant, well, we don't have an assistant. But somebody else can come up with, Peter can come up with an assistant if he wishes. But I don't think we should continue to have this person at the bottom of the page. I'm trying to be polite here.
Well, given that we need an inspector, period, today, tomorrow, and so
Who
forth.
actually shows up.
Shows up, and given that it is a fairly short period of time until we have further evaluations going on, I don't have a problem with your recommendation.
Considering that this is for 1 month, I understand your concern, though I think we have to be cognizant that the results of the hiring process in July or whenever that happens might be different.
Yes, I
right?
understand.
Okay. So I wouldn't want anyone to have an expectation that what we appointed for a month was a job offer.
So I don't
Or
want-
didn't
No,
appoint,
it's-
There's
meaning
certain
that's
people in
the
town,
person.
there's certain people in town, including people in the audience, who know what's going on here. I don't want to have to explain to somebody why I voted for the person at the bottom of this after I've been told on 3 different occasions of a failure to perform the job. Well, what are you thinking, Jack? And so that, no, I don't want to do that, even if it's for 5 weeks or whatever it is, 6 weeks. That's all.
Okay.
And these are serious absences from duty or whatever they want to do it. So all of these are interim anyway, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I think what's a little unique about this situation is this is a paid position.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
as opposed to an appointed board or committee. This is a position that is compensated significantly differently for the assistant position versus the electrical inspector
Yeah,
position.
my comments are not a surprise to Peter, by the way, either.
Well, I guess I'm going to have a problem making a judgment on this, an employment judgment or a personnel judgment on who should be, on changing anybody's employment, because I don't have that same input. So I guess I'm going to have to disagree with you and trust that your comments are not news to Peter, and that in the hiring process, those comments or concerns are reflected, and that between now and then, there's a little more scrutiny on the fact that the assistant needs to be called, or needs to be aware if the person isn't there. Because by not appointing someone, we're essentially firing them. And I'm not sure that...
No, we need an inspector of wires and desirably an assistant inspector of wires. The inspector of wires has not done his job in the past year.
I
So I
hear
don't
what
want
you're
to
saying.
continue to appoint somebody who has not done his job.
I hear what you're saying.
And
But I think this is a unique situation, because the only reason we're even doing an appointing right now is we're not quite ready with the hiring process.
I understand.
And so to sort of create a little chaos for 1 month when there are other ways, I think, to make sure that the job gets done for that 1 month
And how would that-
allow the
and
process.
how is that?
Well, I think Peter would have to take a little bit more, I think, a little bit closer view, and make sure that if there's a problem, if the inspector's supposed to be there and the inspector's not there.
There is a problem. There's been 3 specific instances, and these were not trivial instances.
Yeah, and this makes to me, this makes logical sense as to we're taking
Okay.
a step back, but not committing to anything long-term.
Well, but
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
Councilman,
I mean-
I
I
got it.
understand
We're
your
not committing
concern.
to long-term.
not only are we not committing to long-term, and I'll just leave it at that, I'll agree to disagree, but we will, by doing that, have one person who is going to not be appointed to their position and therefore will not be paid. And that's not really our, well, I don't feel prepared to do that because I don't have enough information, nor do I think it's really my job to hire or fire an inspector. That's all I'm coming from.
Well, it is our job because it's in front of us.
The question I
Well,
would,
it's right in
Listen-
front of us. The Board of Selectmen is supposed to vote on these things.
Yeah, and I will, I guess, vote what I,
well, Madam Chair, I
No.
might ask also, since we have B.J. Brown here, should we ask his availability and compliance with the concerns that have been,
I don't think that's fair where we don't have
Which is,
everyone here.
I
Well,
think a
from an
personnel matter.
I
Kinda.
don't want to, I'm trying to even not say the name here, so that I don't want to castigate anybody, but some of what I'm saying is fairly common knowledge amongst the people who respond to these emergencies, like the fire department and the police department, particularly the fire department, school department, and that, it's not that I'm running around here gathering information, but and these were not trivial issues.
I guess, Jack, I'm just saying that that needs to be addressed and in the hiring process, not in this
But why are we going to
1
continue to
month.
appoint somebody
We're
for?
just buying a little time so that we can hire the right
But this
people.
person has, I understand,
So,
but I'm not prepared to vote as of July 1. This is July 1, right?
Correct. So this is a suggestion. Next meeting's on July 10th. Technically, appointments continue on after the expiration of the term, subject to further action by the board,
Right.
appointing somebody else or rescinding an appointment. So I'd suggest that the board take no action on the 2 inspector of wires positions and allow me to do a little more due diligence, have conversations with both of the individuals involved.
concern with that recommendation
Yeah.
is that we need a full-time electrical inspector now.
Part-time.
Because this evening, we could have a problem, and if there's a no-show again, that could be very serious.
I understand the issue.
Okay.
And I do think that I recognize the issues that Jack has brought up. I don't think it's necessarily an entirely fair characterization to say that that individual has not been performing their job. They've done hundreds of electrical inspections over the past
Yep,
year.
understood.
I understand there are concerns about availability for emergency response.
That's precisely what I'm talking about.
And that's why I made that mention, because
But I think Peter's-
so
the
July
day-to-day.
10th is 2 weeks
That's
from
okay.
now. Are we
I'm okay
comfortable
with
with
that.
that?
Yeah,
So we'll pass over the,
and you need to talk to Peter about to know what I know.
well, yes. But I don't, there's a lot of things I don't know. I don't know how many people have applied, what maybe there are 10 people and neither one of these is one of them. So yes, I do have to have a conversation with Peter before the next meeting.
So you want
Okay.
to frame we're just going to pass over those people?
Yeah, we'll
Is that
pass
the
over the,
recommendation, Peter?
Yeah.
so then, but we're okay for a little while. So we're passing over Assistant Inspector of Wires
And wire,
and for the wire one is
Wire
further down, right. So we have Audit Committee appointment next.
Oh. Okay. I move to appoint John O. Wilhelm,
I know him.
somebody we know,
John O.
Richard Jones, and Alexander Began,
Began.
to the Audit Committee for 1 year, for 1-year terms each, beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending on June 30, 2019.
Now, what's the raise for this position, by the way?
It's
We're
5%.
gonna double your pay.
He's gonna double your pay. So I'm happy to second that if you'd like, Jack, since you're one of the appointees.
We just met a week ago and with an elaborate presentation of Oberon. by the way.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I have to recuse myself on that one?
No, you can vote for
Okay.
yourself. What the heck?
Knock yourself out.
Okay.
Jack, you get to report out on those results at the next
Oh,
meeting.
God
Yeah, I'd love to
almighty.
hear that, actually.
I'm going to have to take that thing back I gave you.
OPEB actuarial analysis?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to distill that down.
Yeah,
It's
please.
all,
Please.
I'm going to keep my presentation in Russian so you can understand it better.
Yeah, really.
All right, now we
Okay.
can move on to the building inspector.
Oh, God.
I move to appoint Charles Brett as building inspector for a term beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending July 31st, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
For the same reason,
All those,
that we have one of
Right.
those, right?
Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
All right. Progress. Burial agent. In case you want to get buried, we could have burial agent. I move to appoint William E. Wiles for a one-year term beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending June 30, 2018.
Why does it say placeholder, by the
Oh,
way?
19, I'm sorry,
We
19.
haven't voted, we haven't had a meeting.
Right, and you
We
have-
haven't voted to
Oh, good.
recommend it.
Yeah, that was what was
Yesterday.
added to us.
Okay.
Added to the books. We have it now.
So this is a one-year term, Jack.
Right, okay.
Okay. Is there a
Second.
second?
Discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All
Okay.
right.
Another heavy-duty position coming.
Fence viewer appointment. Think we used to do this.
I think so, too.
I move to appoint Charles Brett as fence viewer for a term beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending July 31st, 2018.
I'll second that with the question. Has anybody actually gone out and looked at any fences in the last 10 years?
No, and this is also, we've talked about this off and on over
Like
the years,
that.
generally when this comes up. It's
Just a-
also to adjudicate on issues between neighbors.
Oh.
Relative
oh,
to
yeah.
fences.
Relative defenses,
Yeah.
correct.
You have to
Sorry,
really
so I
clarify
should be
that.
clear on that.
If I might,
Oh,
it did-
okay.
it actually did come up at the Maples back a few years ago.
Oh, no, I understand. I thought they'd be in the woods or something.
Well, there is that.
Preambulation business, you know.
Right,
Okay,
okay.
that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right,
Where are we going next?
done.
No.
No, we're not.
I don't think
not
so,
done.
John. We got Bill
got-
Melville and,
Community at HWCAM.
All right. All right, the Hamilton Wenham Community Access and Media appointment. I move to appoint Kevin Sano? Kevin Sano. I should know her. My kids all had her.
well, it's not spelled the usual way anyway.
Correct.
so.
Sano to the Hamilton Wenham Community Access and Media Board for a 3-year term beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending June 30, 2021.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just one note, it really doesn't have to do with this, but it does have to do with HWCAM. We had a presentation last time by Bill about the ability to get onto YouTube and watch all the meetings on YouTube.
Really?
Very cool.
Very cool.
Very
Oh,
cool.
that's right, yeah.
Easy to subscribe, easy to see.
I love YouTube.
Great. So, anyway, that doesn't have to do with Kevin, but I'm ready to vote for Kevin.
And she's a good woman, too.
And Kevin will do a great job. So,
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
unanimous.
Unanimous, all right. Next one, Inspector of Wires appointment.
We're going to pass over that one
Okay.
till the next meeting, right?
Yep.
Okay, local inspector appointment. Okay, I move to appoint James Bone as building inspector for a term beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending July 31st, 2018. And, second? Second?
Is building inspector the correct term? Shouldn't we be appointing him
He's
as
the
local inspector?
Local inspector, correct.
Oh,
So, that
okay, local.
motion is actually to appoint James Bone as local inspector.
Got it.
Okay.
Any discussion?
Just
Oh,
that one
did I
amendment.
get a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Thank you. So,
That one amendment is all I had. I'm ready.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
All right, plumbing and gas inspector appointment. I move to appoint Kevin Dash as plumbing and gas inspector for a term beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending July 31st, 2018.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
Plumbing and gas inspector, assistant appointment. I move to appoint David Perrine as plumbing and gas inspector assistant for a term beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending July 31st, 2018.
Second.
Any discussion?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Doing good.
How come this guy's got a 3-year term
I
coming up?
know.
It's where the rest of them have 1 year.
Really?
Town
You'd think he was something
administrator.
special.
We're going to do that through the end of July?
Inside-
Yeah, right. I think we better
This
give
is
him
an
a 3-year
inside
term.
job. This is, you
I'm
know,
thinking definitely a 3-year term for this guy.
How come there's 2 names here?
Pick your poison.
I
We
didn't say that.
proudly, John will proudly make the motion to,
I am going to. I move to appoint Peter Lombardi as town administrator for a 3-year term beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending June 30, 2021.
I'll second that with pleasure.
okay,
Any discussion?
ready to vote?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Catherine, you didn't raise your hand.
Especially since we signed a contract with him for 3 years. It's probably a
All
good
right.
idea that we appointed him.
Okay,
we-
Veterans Committee appointments. I move to appoint Albert W. Dodge Jr., Michael S. Lucy, and Dean W. Peterson to the Veterans Committee for each having a 3-year term, beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending June 30, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope, happily appoint
in
those.
favor?
Aye. I have
Aye.
a comment, though.
Unanimous.
I saw, excuse me, Peter, I
Yep.
saw an email today from Dean Peterson recommending another
Bill Wilson.
naval officer. Yes, Bill Wilson, right. So that would come up in the next meeting or
It's going
something?
to be on the July 10th agenda.
Because there is an opening in that.
There is an opening, and yep, that'll be
Who was the
on.
person who resigned? I forget.
I believe there has been a vacancy. I think
Right.
only 8 were appointed.
Right, we never
I think,
appointed
I think when we
last
were
person.
talking about the initial charge for the committee, we had talked about 7, but then we had 8 interested folks.
Oh, I
and
remember
so
that.
then we included 9 to have the odd number, yeah.
By the way, they voted to have the summer off, so that they've done.
I
Well-
like
well
that vote.
deserved.
Whew, yeah, really.
Unanimous, actually.
If you think I was close to done, I'm not.
Let's vote that. Let's vote that here.
Okay, the Wish Committee appointments. I move to appoint Donald J. Tillum Jr. and Calvin M. Perkins to the Wish Committee for each having a 3-year term, beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending June 30, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
Okay, so that's it for appointments, I believe. And we're into, yes, I think. We're into year-end appropriation transfers, check.
Yeah, we're into D now.
Yeah, you want to come up,
Yeah,
Leslie?
yeah,
Let me
Jack.
just give, so you don't have to go through each line here, so that we have,
She was looking forward to going through every line.
what?
No,
No,
I'm
I
kidding.
wasn't.
I'm kidding.
Good.
I'm kidding.
So every year that the state statutes allow the town to basically move money from accounts that are in a surplus or projected surplus situations to accounts that could use additional money, and we're allowed to do that the last 2 months of the fiscal year, and indeed for the first couple of weeks after the fiscal year. So we're moving $75,839.83 out of basically 4 major accounts, which are unemployment of $7,000, employee benefits of $45,000 and change, fire on-call wages of $20,000, and water salaries and wages of $2,000, and finance expenses of $1,000, and distributing it to about a dozen different accounts. The largest one would be police salaries and wages of $40,000 out of the $75,000. The second largest would be snow and ice, which we had a hard winter, as most people remember, of $15,000 and change. And it goes down from there to $6,000 for building and grounds and salaries and wages. Beyond that, we're talking about $200 here, $100 there. There's actually one for $7 The children's librarian salary. There's one for $61.70.
It's going to be in the library.
So this is the annual thing we do.
That is true.
Because unlike for-profit and not-for-profit, we can't go into a deficit position. We only can spend money either through reserve fund transfers or moving money from accounts that we don't expect to spend all of what was appropriated to accounts that we're under stress to spend more money. But that's just a summary. You want to add anything to that?
No, I think you summarized it just perfectly.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Can I add one thing to that?
Of course.
So I'm going to make the assumption, these also require approval by the FinCom, which met last night.
We met last night.
So I'm presuming these were all
Yes,
approved by the FinCom.
absolutely. Yep.
And I guess I should comment that the police salary and wages, the one that caught my eye, was due to the police captain transition, in case someone was wondering why we
Right.
needed a little more money for that.
Right, that was a major driver
Major
behind
driver
that.
behind that.
Yep, there was that overlap with the new captain coming in and obviously being from outside the department. Yep.
Those are my comments. I think we should vote.
So that was, I move that we, is there a motion?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did I already read it?
Nope.
you could,
Well,
might help.
might help, John, thank you. I move to approve the attached list, as I just described in summary fashion, of appropriation transfers totaling, I just read the amount a moment ago, $75,839.83 for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2018, presented by the Finance Director, augmented by one of the selectmen, as provided for under Massachusetts general laws, and as approved by the Finance and Advisory Committee, which Catherine just mentioned a minute ago, which was in the motion.
I will
Yeah,
second
said
that
that.
motion, Jack.
All in favor?
You did well. Aye.
I should have said further discussion,
Well,
but
we kind of had it.
kind of had it.
So
You're
unanimous.
good, right?
Thank you, Leslie, good
Thank you.
job.
Leslie.
Okay, so we have an additional vacation carryover request. If my memory serves me, we've done some of these, but the town does have a policy which identifies that all vacation and personnel time must be used by no later than June 30th unless expressly allowed by vote of the selectmen to be carried over. So there's one additional one, aside from the ones that we voted on at last meeting?
Last meeting, correct. Yeah.
And it's for James Politano, Facilities Manager, 5 days, 40 hours. So I move the Board of Selectmen approve the town employee vacation carryover request as detailed in the just read attached memo from FY18 to FY19 and to be used by September 30th, 2018.
Second?
Discussion? Nope. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next one's Jack, draft scope of work for regional dispatch study.
No, it's
No,
me.
oh, sorry.
Me.
I have a
He's got the
terrible
farm one.
time.
Me.
He's got
Going
the
to the farm.
Oh, the farm,
And I have a couple of questions.
and it's John, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. I gotta.
Two questions. One, I didn't see any markups or changes, so I assume, is it correct for me to assume that both the principals of the operation signing this contract and the requirements of the contract are same as Bob?
Yeah, so this is a 5-year lease agreement with the food project to rent the 30-plus acres of Reynolds Farm up off Larch Row. And the food project held the soon-to-be expiring this fall 5-year lease agreement. This is a new 5-year lease agreement between the town Conservation Commission, has already signed off and approved it. When we drafted the prior lease agreement, we obviously had different town council. So we had town council, new-ish town council review. They made a few very minor tweaks, none of which are policy or related or substantive. And so it has been vetted by legal. Again, very minor, couple wording changes here or there,
So
nothing
the
that's
question's relevant,
material.
but not.
Correct. Yeah, that's why we didn't show the red line version.
Yeah,
just
that's what I was
because-
looking for. I said, yeah.
Nope, there was, it literally, a handful of minor grammatical changes.
So do we still get a lunch treatment up there? Or?
I'm sure they'd be happy to
Yeah,
have
boy.
us for their lunches. Again, we haven't gotten this year's schedule, but that was a great event to go to last year.
We got on their list.
We did, for sure.
We now got a lot of information.
All right, then, with that in mind, Oh, so what is the total dollar amount coming to the town?
So 60 times 17.8 times,
Yeah, so it's
I think that should-
$1,068 a year for each of the 5 years, based on the acreage.
Okay, then I move to approve the new 5-year lease agreement with the Food Project, Inc. as presented at the annual lease amount of $60 per acre for a total of 17.8 acres, or a total dollar amount to the town of Wenham of $1,068.00.
I'll second that, but I have a comment on it too. So last time we did this, whoever the manager of the farm was came here and made a very brief presentation
Oh, yeah.
on what they were doing. You know, they're planting this, not planting that. They're leaving this field fallow, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right.
He was brief, but it was educational. And you know, if he can come back for 5 or 10 minutes and just tell us what he's doing, I think it'd be interesting for the people in town to listen to that.
Yeah, certainly.
I
We
agree.
didn't invite him because he had already come in and met with the Conservation Commission, who technically are responsible for the care, custody, and control of the Reynolds Farm. But we can certainly invite him in.
I
I'm
think
sure
it's
he'd be-
interesting and
Yeah.
it's a
brief.
view to the public.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Brief, and he was brief last time too.
It's
So I wouldn't
Well, why
suggest
you
he
invited him.
wasn't.
And at least from what I understand,
It's a wonderful program.
It's a wonderful,
for these
wonderful
young
program.
folks that can
Yeah,
get their hands
yeah.
out in the soil and do something.
And he brought a couple of his assistants with him as well,
right,
I
I
recall.
think it's great for the town. We have land that is, we can actually continue to farm, and great for the kids, and a good program, so.
We haven't voted it yet.
No, I'm waiting.
Second, is there a second?
We have a second.
Oh, you did,
Any
okay.
further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Now, Jack,
Yes.
draft scope of work for regional dispatch.
I'm going to be extremely brief. Peter, would you take this over?
That's my favorite kind of.
Well, he's
Yeah, he's-
knee-deep in this thing.
he is knee-
It's unfair for me to
Might
summarize.
even be further
It's
than
hard to
knee deep.
summarize in the first place, but anyway, take it away, Peter.
Sure, so,
You got promoted for another 3 years.
Promoted, he wishes.
that's right.
Did you say 3 months?
No, 3 years.
So,
Whatever.
included in your packet is a preliminary scope of work for Municipal Resources Inc., to conduct feasibility study to look at our regional dispatch options relative to either joining with Hamilton, rejoining with Hamilton, or joining Danvers with their current facilities. So what we've tried to do to the greatest extent possible is, I think in some ways, ride the coattails of work that has already been done. So MRI was hired back in 2014 to look at the feasibility of regional dispatch with Hamilton, Ipswich, and Manchester at the time. And so they did a lot of data gathering and analysis and the like back then. Just last year, in 2017, they did a similar feasibility study looking at regional dispatch in Danvers with Hamilton and Manchester again. And so they produced a report relative to those communities joining Danvers. So the good news is that based on this scope of work, our out-of-pocket dollar cost is going to be pretty significantly lower than those other two studies that were on the order of $20,000+ each. This scope of work, as proposed, is $9,000. So what the scope covers at this point is really looking at each of the key issues to take into account in terms of facilities, technologies, staffing, and operational feasibility, as well as transition costs, capital costs, full integration, interoperability, and obviously financial implications. So the idea in having this initial discussion tonight was for the board to take a look at the scope of work, so then I could reach out to both Danvers and Hamilton and have their managers, public safety chiefs take a look through it and make sure everybody's on the same page. I didn't want us to proceed along working on a feasibility study that wasn't exactly covering everything that they wanted to see as well. And then hopefully by the July 10th meeting, finalize the scope of work, get their feedback, and engage MRI to begin doing the work. Obviously, this is not something that is in the FY19 budget, so it would require a reserve fund transfer. So that's kind of process-wise where we are at this point. The one thing I will add is that while it's certainly considered within the scope of work, I think we want to make a separate explicit mention of shared frequencies or standalone frequencies if we were to either go to Hamilton or Danvers. I know on the operational side especially, that's a sensitive topic with the police and fire departments, and so we want to understand what the recommendation is and what the financial implications are staffing wise if we are on our own frequency versus sharing those frequencies. I will say, circling back to the rec, they're based on the findings of the audit report that were completed in February. They have begun working on transitioning on the fire side, going to shared frequencies with not one frequency for the 4 fire departments, but 2. So combining Middleton and Topsfield and combining, so they're the first kind of pilot. Then we would be combining with Essex down the line on the fire side. And then based on how that process goes, we would look at doing the same on the police side. That's really the one of the main recommendations from the audit, both from a staffing perspective in terms of managing the call volume, and from the financial perspective of right sizing the organization, as opposed to having a regional dispatch center in name but not in necessarily reality by maintaining all those separate frequencies. So I will say there has been some good progress made at the REC in the past several months since the audit report was released. One of the key concerns that we had was long-term financial sustainability, given the amount of subsidy that the state and Sheriff's Department had been providing historically. For FY18, the Sheriff's contribution is right around $300,000. Part of how they got there was using some one-time funds. But for FY19, the budget that was just approved at our last meeting, the Sheriff subsidy is again on the order of just over $300,000. So in the span of 6 months, honestly, we've gone from the Sheriff contributing over $2 million to fund the REC down to $300,000. So I think that's some good progress. We do have a board meeting next week with state officials at State 911 and EOPS to hear about FY20, what the future looks like in terms of governance, management, finances, et cetera. We were held harmless for FY19, so our $16.26 per capita rate, the $82,000 a year, will hold for FY19, but FY20 is the big question mark.
Sure, it's the next step, right?
Yeah, so that's what's happening, been happening over the past few months globally on regional dispatch.
Can I ask questions?
Yep.
I guess first, in no way am I looking to abandon the Middleton facility at this time. I think there's still too many possibilities and unasked questions. Are you is you recommending that we spend some money to do some further research? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think the $9,000 is well spent in terms of due diligence, understanding what our options are because of the uncertainty long-term with the rec. There's been discussion about State 911 potentially taking it over.
So they would include the rec into this evaluation?
No, they just completed the management audit of the rec. They know exactly, it's a 500-page document. They know exactly the current status of the rec
Well,
and have laid out a very detailed roadmap for where it needs to get to.
So I guess that's the base of my question is,
Yep.
it would include the rec.
No, the feasibility study is covering our options if we join Hamilton or Danvers, because we're in the rec now.
Right.
We are well aware of what the issues are.
So you're saying we're adequately
Yes.
knowledgeable?
John, Plan B.
Yeah.
Plan A is the rec, okay?
Yeah.
But with all the uncertainty, we need a Plan B. And this is what.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get to
And
find.
it would be months, up to a year plus in the making if we were to make that transition. If we were to decide today that we were leaving the rec, not that we are, it would take a long time to get there, so we need to be fully prepared in terms of understanding what our options are, what our costs are, what the implications would be.
All right, then following your lead, why are we limiting the search to Danvers and Hamilton?
Because those are the only communities that are interested and able to host more than one community right now in.
I read a lot of newspaper articles on the Salems and Beverleys and other communities who are out there scrambling to figure out what they're going to do as well. So keeping our foot on the rock that we know currently is working for us at a good rate. If we're going to expand our search further, why wouldn't we broaden that search to other communities?
So I think, quite honestly, some of the dialogue that's been had in the past several months relative to Amesbury opting out has been the fact that the regional center and regionalization, I guess I'll say generally, works best with similar sized communities and similar forms of governance. And so the discussion has been really that once the rec is in a better position operationally and financially, and they start to be able to want to and are able to do that outreach to other communities to get them to join in, that they should be focused on towns and not cities. And so I think the other folks you're talking about, Beverly and Salem, I don't think that those would be necessarily a good fit operationally for us, certainly in terms of the call volume. I mean, if we talk about some reticence in sharing frequencies with a Hamilton or Danvers, the call volume, if we were sharing frequencies with a Danvers, with a Salem or Beverly, would be tenfold, and that's something where.
Well, that's what caught my interest in the rec operation to begin with.
Yep.
Is that we would have a seat at the table, even though we were a much smaller community than the Beverleys and the Lawrences and so forth. Those were some of the original folks that were being solicited to join in.
And I think having that seat at the table is as important as the operational and financial side of it. That's, I think, quite honestly, why things ended up the way they did in some respects with Hamilton. And that's I don't think I'm speaking out of school saying that.
Well, I'm just very concerned that, going too small, say to the Hamiltons, I can see a weakness there all by itself because you won't carry enough weight to institute and keep functional with technology. That was one of the big concerns I had with the Middleton operation, is that we were going to be state-of-the-art from the beginning, and then we would continue because of the commitment of the operation. The mission statement was you would keep your technology up to date all the time, and every so many years, 3 or 5 or whatever it is, that you would get the updates and make sure you stay.
I think the other thing to keep in mind with Middleton is that what was initially envisioned isn't necessarily what's played out over time.
Correct,
Right?
absolutely,
'Cause
fully agreed.
It was
And I have
a
the
leap
same-
of faith, but, you know, we were at the forefront of that. And I think that there is now a combined radio room. So prior to, up until about a year or so ago, the calls that came in from the state, the cell calls, went in a separate room, and the town calls went to their own room. And now they're fully combined. So those dispatchers, quite honestly, an overwhelming majority of the work that they're doing and the calls that they're taking are those cell calls coming from other towns, not the 5 that are part of the rec right now. And so that's just another consideration in terms of the quality of service that we're seeing. And you know, one of the findings, the key finding, although there were a lot of key findings from the audit, was the attrition with staff. And they have tried to stabilize that, but that continues to be an issue with turnover of the staff at the rec. And
Have they looked at how other operations attrition is
they have
similar, not similar?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I will say,
Not that I want to get into every detail.
No, but they
I'm
really.
looking at the bigger picture,
Yep.
if I might cut you off one more time. And that's because we did make this big leap over, and it's worked, but it's not worked. I think the management has really been the core of the problem, and the commitment by management to better the operation and stay committed and expand it. If we're going to go see, why aren't we looking a little broader than just those 2 communities? I hear what you say about similar size. Danvers is nowhere as close to our size. They're way off. I mean, they're probably, what, 5 times us?
Yep.
But the governance is,
But they.
the governance is similar.
The governance is similar. They have a town meeting form of government, and right, exactly, and so
And
that's.
I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't do some looking, and as you're saying, Jack, have Plan B in hand, but at the same time, if we're going to make a change, I think we really need to broaden our search further and make sure that we're not limiting ourselves, and because I just see this whole emergency call responsibility as something incredibly important to us, but the evolution of it is happening so quickly that who's got the better mousetrap? I don't know. I'm concerned that my ignorance would guide me in the wrong way.
Well,
and how do we get ahead of that?
maybe that's a fair question to ask MRI at some point, if we could go forward with this. Should we, I happen to agree with Peter, more from a decision-making and governance than from a population point of view. I think about the way we, as a Board of Selectmen, make decisions versus Salem or Beverly with a city council that can, you know, every week could make a policy decision. And we may be waiting for a town
And I
meeting.
do interact with the city of Beverly a lot.
Yeah, so I think that
So I'm familiar with
creates,
the larger
it just
peninsulas.
creates a level of logistical difficulty. But I would be interested to just ask MRI if they agree that we should, if we're going to go to Plan B, if we should be considering more or larger, or, you know, what should the, are we okay? Are these parameters reasonable to them, the 2 towns, and not to look at cities? Just as,
And
Just to
again,
get another
part of
confirmation.
part of my rationale, Catherine, is that the rest of the country functions on this type of a system, a regional dispatch that covers very broad territories.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you know this far
Nobody's
beyond me.
nobody's denying that.
And we shouldn't be out here trying to reinvent the wheel over and over again. I thought the state putting $10 million plus into this operation was going to be leading us down a very, very good and strong path. Well,
it hasn't.
there's problems.
So the one other thing I will say about other potential options on the table, is that there's an infrastructure component that you have to keep in mind in terms of interoperability and sunk costs, capital-wise. is that if we're, one of the other issues that Amesbury has brought up is that they are not contiguous to the rest of the district. And
But today's technology,
it's right, but it's more money.
where's our backup in Middleton? What's the backup to Middleton? Do you know?
Andover PD,
There you go.
correct. But there's been a lot of money that has been, spent at Middleton to allow that backup system to be in
So why
place.
wouldn't we be talking to Andover?
Because we can't use Middleton to get to Andover. And the other thing is that with all of the money that the state has invested in Middleton, I think quite honestly,
Politics might get in the way?
they're probably going to be reticent to spend additional state grant funding on our capital needs to transition out of the rec to somebody else.
Fair comment.
That's a fair statement.
And so,
Yeah.
who are our closest partners where the infrastructure is already there to a certain extent? It's Hamilton and Danvers.
I guess Danvers in particular, since they have a newly built facility that's underutilized, that has capacity.
And,
I
right,
guess as does Hamilton.
they both have capacity. And there's a reason why the feasibility studies were focused on those two programs. And the other thing I will say is that we already have the dark fiber connection with Hamilton in place, existing from when we were with them before. And Danvers received $100,000 in grant funding from the state this fall to build a dark fiber connection to Wenham. So we're going to have that, whether we move forward with them or not on regional dispatch, that infrastructure is going to be there.
I don't think most people know what dark fiber means. Maybe you should explain that a little
Please,
bit.
yes.
I do, but I don't think my colleagues do. Maybe they do.
Give us a little credit.
So,
I think I know dark
Well,
fiber
okay.
is.
Well,
But let's have the public, no, let's have the public here. Peter and I had a discussion about
That's who
this not
pays the
too long
bill.
ago.
That's who's going to
Yeah,
be making
so-
the calls.
so it really allows for our, the backbone of our IT infrastructure to be connected without depending on a third party to make those connections. Is that the best high level?
So you take one hand out of the mix or
Okay,
any interference.
that's true. It's a dedicated line. It's not, it's a dedicated line. It's not dependent upon Comcast or somebody else.
Yep.
I still think that Catherine made a good
Verizon or
point.
whatever.
Maybe it would be very helpful, for me at the very least, to have MRI come in and have a further conversation.
Yeah, and I'll certainly ask them if they think that we're not thinking outside the box, or if there are other options that they think should be on our radar that aren't.
Right.
I'll certainly ask them that.
Okay, thank you.
Meanwhile, we have a Plan B proposal in front of us with MRI. Who has, I forgot who has this
Well,
agenda.
I don't
right?
think we're, yeah, well, I
This is
think
just a,
it's just a discussion, it's just a
George,
review.
yeah.
I think the intention is to review it, ask our questions as we have, and next meeting.
So yeah, really, it's a matter of if the board's comfortable with the scope of work as it is, adding in the shared frequency piece, then I would reach out to Danvers and Hamilton and ask for their feedback between now and our next meeting, assuming they're okay with it, or if there are any changes, I'd let you know. Then it would be approved at the next meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, anything further on that? Okay, I believe that that is the end of new business, since at least I don't have any other matters that have not been reasonably anticipated.
Merit pay for non-union employees.
Well, that's old business.
Oh,
And that's the first item in old business, and it's Jack.
Peter.
Okay.
How's that ball?
So we, as you may remember, we did the first wave of these recommendations for FY18 merit pay for non-union employees a couple meetings ago. This latest wage schedule reflects there are, let's see, 6 positions that weren't included in that first wave that are now included. We've completed the performance evaluation process for those individuals, and the major reason for the delay was these were positions that were that also have other relationships with various boards and committees. So water superintendent, water commission, the assessors, and the like. So there are those 6 recommendations. They vary from 1% to 2% increases. The scale is 0 to 2% this year. And I guess I'll just say at a very high level, the total recommended increases for all the employees allocated 85% of the $28,000 that was appropriated for FY18 merit pay. And these are again retro back to July 1 of this fiscal year.
So if I can just extrapolate to that, because I think you made an important point that might not have been clear. I think there might have been a concern at one point in time as we discussed the adoption of merit pay, that we were going to put a plug number in the budget and then all of it was just going to be used and everybody was going to get a 2%, an additional 2%. And I think the point of this is, one of the points is that not everyone got a 2%. There was some clear criteria, and to prove that, only 85% of what we budgeted was actually used.
And I will say that was actually slightly under budgeted, because when we made that calculation, we just looked at the non-union employees in the salary matrix. Later on, we realized that the library director position, although she's in another separate salary matrix, was still eligible for merit pay. So we hadn't budgeted for that, and she did receive the full 2%. So that 85% is a little misleading. It actually would have been lower than that if we budgeted appropriately.
So it's a good thing we didn't.
Correct.
100% or we wouldn't have budgeted enough.
Correct.
Okay, that was my only comment on that.
So I have the motion, I move to approve the recommended fiscal 18 merit pay increases as presented by our town administrator, Peter Lombardi.
Second?
Further discussion?
Just one comment. There's obviously one that was voted on tonight that needs to be included in this list, just for the record. Yours.
Yeah. Yeah, because I just had the placeholder
Right,
TBD
right.
in there. Yeah.
So just so that next year when we look at it, we
2%.
we know. Yes. Okay. I have no further.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, I think that was the only old business we have. And the thing that we have are a bunch of minutes.
That's right. So Catherine, I've been
away,
working
Jack.
diligently. First of all, I want to compliment Catherine Dinsley for an outstanding job drafting these minutes.
As always.
For the first time in 5 years, I actually read them thoroughly.
5 years? 3
And
years.
Catherine knows I read them thoroughly, and that, and so she did a great job, and I only had some minor, not grammatical, very minor changes that were not substantive. So in front of us, we have, I move to approve the Board of Selectmen's meeting minutes of April 24th, 2018, May 1st, 2018, May 3rd, 2018, May 15th, 2018, June 5th, 2018.
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Now we're going to go on to the executive sessions,
All right.
which we have to do in 2 tranches.
Busy lady over there.
Yeah, she did a very good job. So she sent it to me, I reviewed them, and a couple of nitpicking comments, and give them back to her, and she changes it. So I vote to approve and hold the Board of Selectmen executive sessions meeting minutes of April 24, 2018. There's 2 executive sessions there. May 15, 2018, 1 executive session. May 15, 2018, 2 executive sessions. And June 5th, 2018. Should be 1 there, right?
Yeah, and I think what that means is if there were 2 executive sessions, that April 24th, that's approving it, that we're holding, is the second
Yeah.
of the 2, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so, right.
Executive session 2. And there was only apparently 1 on June 5th.
Correct.
Correct.
Right.
So I think we need to vote these before we move on to the second tranche.
I'll second that, just for
Further
expedience.
discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, the second tranche, I move to approve and release the Board of Selectmen executive session meeting minutes of April 24, 2018, 1 meeting, May 1st, 2018, and May 1st, and
So,
2. We should change this a little bit.
well, we had 2 different executive sessions.
Yeah, right, but We could have put 2 instead of just repeating it, though, right?
No,
it's
it's
the-
executive session number 1 and executive session number 2.
Yeah, I got that.
Both on May 1st.
Both on
Oh,
May 1st.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, anyway. Second?
Se-
Further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Again, very good job.
That being it.
Very good job, Catherine,
I
again.
will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, as always.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. So
Thank you.